There's a kind of loneliness no one warns you about. It doesn't come from being alone. It comes from being surrounded and still feeling invisible. You show up, you smile, you talk, joke, agree, but inside, there's a dull ache, a silent question echoing through every conversation. Does anyone actually see me? You laugh when something hurts. You nod when something feels wrong. You keep everything on the surface, not because you want to, but because every time you tried to go deeper, someone made you regret it. They told you, you're too sensitive. You think too much. You always have to make things complicated. So you stopped explaining. You stopped sharing. You stopped showing the parts of you that weren't easy to understand. Because nothing cuts deeper than opening your soul and being met with silence. That's when it starts. You shrink your voice. You twist your words to sound more acceptable. You suppress your real thoughts so you can keep the peace. And little by little, you become palatable, digestible, tolerable, but not known. Carl Jung once wrote, "Loneliness does not come from being alone, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important. That's the pain, not the absence of people, but the absence of resonance. You're still here, but only halfway. The rest of you, the fire, the fear, the rawness, got locked away. Why? Because somewhere down the line, you learned that being understood was conditional. Conditional on tone, on timing, on keeping your depth from spilling out too far. So now you exist in this strange halfway space, not isolated enough to feel fully alone, but not connected enough to feel truly seen. And that kind of isolation is brutal because it makes you doubt your own experience. You start thinking, maybe I am too intense. Maybe no one really can understand me. Maybe I'm just meant to carry this alone. But what if that pain isn't a sign that you're broken, but that you're awake? What if being misunderstood is part of the path of becoming who you really are? Jung called it individuation, the slow, painful process of stepping away from the collective to become yourself. And that often starts with isolation. Not because you're flawed, but because what's inside you can't be molded to fit what's around you. You're not too much. You're just not easily packaged. You're not unrelatable. You're just rare. You don't belong everywhere. And that's okay, because the pain of being misunderstood, it's not just suffering, it's purification. It burns away the false versions of you, the ones you built just to belong, and what's left is the real you. There's something strange that happens when you're misunderstood long enough. At first, it hurts, then it confuses you, then it changes you. You stop showing up the same way. You stop giving people access to your real thoughts. You speak in vague tones. You start filtering everything you say because you're tired of being told you're too much or too deep or just weird. So you armor up. You become clever, smooth, careful. You give people enough to connect with, but never enough to truly know you. Because being known now feels dangerous. You tell jokes when you want to scream. You nod along when you want to challenge. You play chill when you're on fire inside. And maybe, the scariest part, you get good at it. You become a master of perception, a master of being exactly what the room can handle, even if it means losing your truth in the process. Carl Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear to survive in the social world. And every time we lean on it too hard, we lose touch with the deeper self underneath. But there's only so long a mask can hold. Eventually, The soul starts leaking out in unexpected ways. You feel tired for no reason. You withdraw from people without knowing why. You feel a quiet rage building, not at anyone in particular, but at the weight of being unmet. This is what Jung meant by the individuation crisis. The inner rebellion that rises when the self refuses to stay hidden any longer. It's not you losing it. It's your deeper self refusing to keep playing along. And it's terrifying because the persona is what got you through school, through family, through relationships. It's what helped you blend in. But blending in isn't the same as belonging. And now you're feeling the friction between who you became to be accepted and who you were before you knew what acceptable even meant. So you begin to pull away, not because you hate people, but because you crave honesty, not surface talk, not safe talk, not smiles that don't reach the soul. You want to speak from the gut. You want to be heard, not just replied to. You want connection that doesn't come at the cost of erasing yourself. And in that gap, you start to burn. This is the fire, the one that destroys your illusions, the one that burns through the false roles, the one that feels like loneliness, but is actually liberation. Because only when the world stops recognizing your mask can you begin to meet the parts of you that never needed it in the first place. Not everyone survives this part. Some run back to the crowd, back to the comfort of being liked, back to the applause that doesn't mean anything but still feels better than silence. But some stay. They stay in the discomfort. They let the fire burn away what's false. They let themselves be misunderstood on purpose, and that's where something rare begins to happen. Individuality is born. Not the fake be yourself stuff, not the social media kind where you're still waiting for validation in the comments, not curated rebellion, real individuality, the kind that doesn't need to explain itself, the kind that walks away from rooms where the soul doesn't fit, the kind that stops apologizing for its depth. Carl Jung believed that individuation was a spiritual process, not just psychological, because to become your true self, you have to separate from the selves that were handed to you. You have to ask, who would I be if I wasn't trying to be loved? What part of me is real? And what part is survival? Am I expressing myself or just repeating what kept me safe? It's a stripping away, layer by layer, lie by lie. It's grieving the version of you who just wanted to be accepted, even if it meant disappearing. It's facing the emptiness that comes when the crowd walks away, because they will. Not everyone wants the real you. Some only wanted the agreeable you, the edited you, the version of you that fit their idea of normal. But you're not here to be normal. You're here to be whole. And here's the paradox. The more you let yourself be misunderstood, the more you finally start to understand yourself, your patterns, your triggers, your voice. You don't just hear it. You start trusting it, and slowly, the isolation becomes less like exile and more like a sanctuary. You spend more time alone, but you're not lonely. You feel less seen, but more real. You speak less, but when you do, it's from the marrow. This is where the healing begins, not by finding more people, but by finding more of yourself and why being misunderstood might be the ultimate sign that you're finally living your truth. If this is waking something up in you, don't scroll past it. Hit subscribe, not for the algorithm, but for the version of you that's been buried under masks, quiet, tired, and waiting to be reclaimed. You're not here to fit in. You're here to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. Subscribing isn't just support. It's a declaration that you're done performing, that you're ready to live from truth, even if it means being misunderstood. If that's you, I'll see you in the next part. There's a moment when the pain of being misunderstood becomes quieter, not because it stops, but because you stop needing to be understood. You stop needing approval to feel real. You stop over-explaining your depth to people swimming in the shallow end. You stop begging the world to validate the parts of you it was never built to hold. And that's when the shift happens. You start living from your center, not the crowd. You speak, even if your voice shakes. You create, even if no one claps. You walk, even if you're walking alone. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But most people don't experience that privilege because they spend their whole life becoming what others find acceptable. And here you are, choosing the harder path, the path of truth over comfort, clarity over compliance, integrity over approval. It costs you. You lose people. You lose familiarity. Sometimes you lose your own sense of who you are because the mask was so tight for so long it left a mark. But what you gain peace, the kind that doesn't disappear when you're alone, the kind that comes from alignment, not applause. You no longer fear being different. You fear going back to being fake. You no longer panic when someone misunderstands you. You feel calm because you know who you are now. You don't argue to be seen. You don't bend to be liked. You've stopped shape-shifting, and in that stillness, something even deeper awakens. Purpose. You realize your individuality isn't just about self-expression. It's about contribution. It's about offering the world something real, something rare, something undiluted. And the irony, the very thing that made you feel alone, is what others will one day seek you for, not for your performance, but for your presence. You didn't ask for this path. You didn't wake up one day and say, "I want to feel invisible. I want to be the outsider." But life handed it to you anyway, maybe through childhood, maybe through heartbreak, maybe through years of hearing. You're too intense. You're too deep. You think too much. And somewhere along the way, that pain began to shape you. It refined you. It started carving something in you that didn't exist in the people around you. A kind of awareness, a kind of sharpness, a kind of presence. Carl Jung believed that suffering was not just an obstacle to overcome, but a channel through which the self is born. Your suffering didn't just hurt you, it shaped you. It called you inward when the world refused to meet you. And now, that inward journey has given you something rare. Perspective. You see things other people miss. You feel things more deeply. You carry a kind of depth that can't be faked or taught. Not because you're special, but because you were forged. You became the kind of person who listens between the lines, who notices the pain behind the laughter, who sees behind the mask, because you spent years hiding behind one yourself. And this is where the story turns. The same pain that made you feel separate is the same pain that makes you essential. You weren't meant to blend in. You were meant to offer something different, something true period. Your path wasn't random. The loneliness wasn't wasted. The misunderstanding wasn't meaningless. It was making space for something that couldn't grow in the noise of normality. And now you face a choice. You can either keep hiding, keep downplaying your voice, Keep softening your edges to make others comfortable, or you can step fully into your individuality, not as rebellion, but as contribution, because someone, somewhere, is waiting for exactly what you've been through, not your mask, not your performance, but your honest process, your clarity, your story, your presence. And when you start living from that place, when you stop trying to explain and just start embodying, you don't just survive misunderstanding, you transcend it. People will still misread you, some will still judge you, but it won't hurt the same, because you'll know who you are, and more importantly, you'll know why you are. In the final part, we'll bring this full circle. We'll explore what it looks like to live with peace, even if no one ever fully understands you, because maybe that peace isn't something others give you. Maybe it's something you give yourself. So what happens now? What happens when you've accepted that most people will never fully understand you, and you've stopped needing them to? What happens when you stop waiting for a mirror in others and finally become your own reflection? Something unexpected happens. Peace. Not the kind that comes from everything being okay. Not comfort, not safety, not perfection. The kind of peace that comes from alignment. You stop living in reaction. You stop contorting yourself to be digestible. You stop shrinking to fit someone else's limits. You finally say what you mean, even if it makes the room uncomfortable. You finally walk away when something violates your truth, even if it costs you everything familiar. You finally become whole. Carl Jung believed that the true self isn't found in the crowd. It's forged in silence, in solitude, in those moments of painful clarity where you realize no one's coming to save me from being me. And that's okay, because you're not here to be saved. You're here to remember, to come back to the voice that's always been whispering underneath the noise. You don't need to be understood to be real. You don't need to be liked to be worthy. You don't need to belong everywhere to belong to yourself. So now you walk differently, not with arrogance, but with rootedness. You still feel lonely sometimes. You still crave connection, but it no longer defines you. It no longer erases you. You don't perform wholeness. You live it. And the world, it may never catch up to who you really are. It may never fully see you, but you will, every day, a little more. And maybe, just maybe, that's the point. To live not for applause, but for truth. To stand not at the center of attention, but at the center of yourself. Because in that stillness, the one no one claps for, you find something rare. Freedom. Not the freedom to be understood, the freedom to exist anyway.